It all began on July 18, 1981, in Brookfield, Connecticut. Ed and Lorraine Warren, along with their cameraman Drew, were called to the Glatzel home to witness the exorcism of an 8-year-old boy named David Glatzel. Everyone, including David's parents Carl and Judy, his sister Debbie and her boyfriend Arnie, the two demonologists Drew and Father Gordon, were busy preparing for the exorcism. The house already looked like a wreck, perhaps a result of the demonic presence. Broken chandeliers, peeling wallpaper, and shards of glass littered the spacious rooms. Ed felt sorry for the exhausted boy and told him to rest a while. Arnie offered to take David upstairs to his room, and the two spent a few moments together. Arnie assured the boy that he would not let anything happen to him. However, David had no idea how far Arnie would go to protect him. A few moments later, David was startled out of his sleep by a pounding on his door. Panicked, he ran to the bathroom and hid behind the shower curtains as the door handle rattled as if someone was trying to force their way in. Suddenly, silence fell. The silence lasted a while, but David felt there was someone else in the room. Alas, as he looked up, a blackened hand crawled up the curtain rod. There was a creaking sound as the faucet turned, and the shower head was squirting, not water, but blood. Hearing his son's screams, Carl rushed into the bathroom and found David standing by the cabinet as if nothing had happened. In the blink of an eye, David sprang at his father and stabbed him in the thigh with a battle cry. Just as he was about to attack Carl again, Ed grabbed David and almost ordered Father Gordon to begin the exorcism right here, right now. He laid the boy on the living room table, held him down, and the priest began the procedure. The boy's body began to contort unnaturally, and Lorraine began to see visions of the demonic ritual. Again, all was quiet, until plates began to fly out of the cupboard, one of which hit Father Gordon on the head. Of course, the ritual was not completed, and the demon that had possessed David attacked Ed, trying to rip out his heart. Not knowing how to help, Arnie threw himself in front of David and gave himself over to the demon in exchange for David's safety. David's exorcism was successful, but Ed went into a coma. Months of torture were over for the little boy, but for Arnie Johnson, it was just beginning. A few months later, Debbie and Arnie began living and working with Bruno Saul, the owner of a local dog kennel. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ed lay unconscious and Lorraine remembered the time they first met, when he suddenly regained consciousness. He ordered his wife to tell the Glatzels where the monster had grabbed Arnie. Lorraine called the police to warn them of an accident at the kennel. Debbie and Bruno danced and had fun, but Arnie's condition worsened. His hallucinations worsened, sweat poured down his face, and he gasped for breath underwater. In a moment of stupor, he saw the landlord as a demonic creature coming to kill him. Panicked, he pulled out his knife and brutally stabbed Bruno 22 times, killing him on the spot. Later, the police captured Arnie as he stumbled on the pavement covered in the victim's blood. In the interrogation room, Lorraine and Ed speculate that Arnie is currently not possessed because he is able to read the Bible without stumbling. However, Debbie comes to defend her boyfriend and says that she was there and that the one who killed Bruno was not Arnie. The two exorcists try to convince Arnie's lawyer about the exorcism by showing him all their previous findings, especially Annabelle. But the question is, how will they prove Arnie's innocence in court? The scene changes and we enter the courtroom. Arnie's lawyer pleads innocent due to exorcism. Immediately after, Ed and Lorraine begin gathering evidence for the case, starting from the start of David's exorcism, where it all began 5 months before the exorcism. The Glatzels had just moved into their new home. While wandering around, David found a waterbed in childlike excitement, having no idea that this was the place where the devil would take over. Someone ripped the bedclothes, water burst out, and David was soaked, shaking, and scared. Back in the present, Ed found rotten wood where the bed should have been, and the damage was definitely not from water. Then Lorraine decided to go down to the basement, just below the rotting floor. There she found a horde of rats, and among them lay a witch's totem used by Satanists in their rituals. The Warrens believed that David was cursed, and during the exorcism, the curse was passed on to Arnie as well. Believing that this was the work of the occult, the Warrens enlisted Drew's help. Pictures of the totem were to be sent to all local police stations for any information. Also, at Father Gordon's suggestion, the Warrens decided to visit a former priest named Kastner, who was famous for studying a cult called the Disciples of the Ram. Kastner took them down to his basement and explained the ins and outs of curses and totems. He then warned the two that Arnie was headed to the death chamber, and they would have to use all of their abilities to save him. We got a glimpse of an unknown woman, the same one who was haunting Arnie, beginning another satanic ritual, and then back to Arnie performing his duties in prison. That night, Arnie realized that the demon had returned to taunt him as he began seeing and hearing strange things, such as the patient in the psych ward humming the same song that was played when Bruno was murdered. At the Warrens' home, Ed received a call from Drew, who had received a lead from a homicide detective who had seen a similar totem in Danvers, Massachusetts. When they met with the detective, Clay told him about two girls, Katie and Jessica, who had disappeared about 4 months earlier. In a nearby forest, Katie's body was found with 22 stab wounds, just like Bruno's, but Jessica was still missing. The same totem was found at the bloody crime scene. After the detective made sure that Lorraine was not lying about her ability to see things that normal people cannot see, both parties decided to help each other. Meanwhile, David and Debbie accompanied Arnie to a scheduled meeting. Arnie was hesitant to tell them what was happening to him, but David knew that he too had gone through the same cold, unrefreshing state. Debbie asked what the demon was telling Arnie to do, and we returned to the forest, where Katie was murdered. Lorraine had a feeling that something terrible had happened here, and right at that moment, she was immersed in a divine vision. He saw Katie and Jessica laughing over their adventure in the woods, when suddenly Jessica's eyes turned white and she stabbed Katie. She was possessed. As she came to her senses, Jessica became hysterical, and she ran off into the darkness. Lorraine followed her, not being able to see where she was headed. She fell into a nearby river. Lorraine, mesmerized, was almost about to follow her, but she controlled herself just in time. Yet, she was pulled by a demonic hand to the shore when luckily she was saved by her husband. In fact, Clay and his team found a body at the bottom of the river, and although they were waiting for DNA results, they assured Warren that they would get the case files themselves to look for any clues. Just when Ed was asking him to tell the prison staff to put Arnie on 24-hour suicide watch, the call suddenly cut off with the sound of a terrifying shriek. We return to Arnie and find him in the same state David was in at the beginning of the film, scared and shaking when Father Newman came to give him the vial of holy water. As he begins to see visions again, he sits in the middle of the cell and sprinkles holy water around himself in hopes of safety. Meanwhile, the Warrens break into the funeral home to look for Jessica's body to see if the connection to Lorraine is still open. When they find the body, Lorraine grabs his hand and makes contact. He found himself in a dark basement and saw some stairs, an altar, black candles, and a woman, the same one Arnie often saw. The witch was trying to get him back, desperate to complete the curse. She had Arnie. She made Arnie break the bottle of holy water, and just as she was about to tell him to slit his wrists, Lorraine intervened, which surprised even her, and the witch broke the connection with Arnie. However, Lorraine didn't realize that the connection worked both ways. Back at the funeral home, Ed was begging him to let go of Jessica's hand when suddenly the lights went out. Ed turned away to see what was happening, and was horrified to see a giant dead woman standing there with those same bleary eyes staring at Lorraine. Just as she was about to attack his wife, Ed ran up and pulled Lorraine's hand away, breaking the connection. The witch now knew who they were. Returning home, the Warrens met Drew and Debbie, who told them that Arnie was now sedated in prison. Drew showed them a Renaissance book used for exorcisms. They learned that a curse could be broken if its altar was destroyed. They also related 2 cases in which the cultist had possessed his victims and committed one murder after another before forcing them to commit suicide. The conversation stopped when Ed fell unconscious to the floor. When he woke up in bed, he saw that the house was empty and the cross of Lorraine was lying on the ground outside the front door. He was confronted by the witch, who taunted him for not giving up before disappearing. The same corpse appeared again, this time trying to attack him. She retaliated, and just as he was about to stab her with a knife, he returned, only to realize that he had almost killed his wife. This was when he realized the witch had placed something to infiltrate their home. A confused Ed looked at the wilted, blackened flowers on the table and saw a totem in a vase. Drew and Ed used the case files and clues in Lorraine's vision, such as the sound of a train and the rushing of water, to locate the witch's altar. They discovered that Jessica got her totem from her school, Fairfield University, and quickly realized the witch was near the area. Distraught, Ed grabbed his car keys and left, realizing danger was near. Lorraine went to Father Krasner to ask for help, only to be confronted with the shocking truth that the witch was actually the priest's daughter, Isla, and that he knew about it all along. And if that wasn't tragic enough, he told her that the curse required 3 victims, one of whom was Ed himself, since the witch had placed a totem in his office. The creaking of wood tells Lorraine that Isla is here. Krasner gives her a flashlight and opens the altar door, signaling Lorraine to destroy it. He realizes he has failed his daughter, as his obsession with the occult has taken its toll on him. Seeking some sort of atonement, he begs God for forgiveness. Just then Isla sneaks up behind him and slits his throat. We get a glimpse of Arnie as he wakes up, warning Debbie and Father Newman that he is close, that Isla is about to complete her curse. Backing away, Lorraine finds the altar but is unable to break it. Meanwhile, Ed arrives at the Krasner house and hears Lorraine screaming from beneath the floor. He is determined to break down the door as Isla is holding his wife at knife point, but she escapes his grasp. Ed soon entered the tunnel, but Isla had already reached him. He was furious as the witch used her power to possess him. Isla was preparing for the final execution. At the prison, the police arrived in a rush as Arnie lost control of his body and began to contort unnaturally. The lights went out, the windows broke and a storm began. We alternated between Arnie and Ed as they both lost control of themselves, while their partners were desperate to save them. Debbie held Arnie's hand as he brought a shard of glass to his neck, while Lorraine pleaded with Ed to remember who he was and how many moments they had spent together. Their love was their strength, not their weakness, as Isla thought. The spell was broken. Ed remembered the moment he first saw Lorraine 30 years ago. Arnie regained consciousness and fell to the ground, breathing a sigh of relief, wrapped in his partner's arms. It was all over. Isla, still in denial, pointed a shard of glass at Ed, but was reminded that her curse was broken. This time, her body twisted, and she slit her own throat, ironically killing herself the same way she killed her father. Finally, as the Warren couple crawled out of the eerie tunnel, police sirens wailed in the distance. Another object was added to the Warren Museum, the witch's altar cup. After this, Arnie was charged with manslaughter, instead of the death penalty he was predicted to receive at the beginning of the film. He spent 5 years in prison, and while there he married Debbie. The film ends with Ed and a slightly grown-up Lorraine together, where Ed surprises his wife by bringing her to a gazebo, just like they were on their first date. There they spend their last moments in each other's arms, just like they had 30 years earlier.